Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. We greatly appreciate it. We have Coty Schooley on the podcast. He works for Ashco Exteriors, Inc. He's also the creative designer at his own company, Coty Clothing Co. We're really grateful to have him on the podcast. We're here to talk about mainly his fashion and what got him inspired in that, but most importantly, Coty, great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what got you sort of the fashion bug? What really got you the fever to start making fashion?
All right, so I've always been really artistic my entire life. Artists in my family that do pottery, paintings, drawings, and actually a few people who do kind of some clothing design stuff, but it's more like just their little hobby. But anyways, it all started about 3 years ago when I was at TJ Maxx with an ex-girlfriend of mine, and then we were just looking at dress pants for my sales job at Ashco Exteriors, and basically the clothes were so expensive. I made a joke and said I might as well make this stuff myself. It was right around Christmas time, and I don't think she knew what to get me for Christmas. So, when Christmas came up, I opened up a sewing machine, and I kind of thought it was a joke because I didn't really mean what I said when I said I wanted to make it myself. It was just kind of a comment on how expensive clothing was. But ever since the first day I opened that machine, about 3 months after I got it, I've been sewing pretty much every day. And it really helped me get a really good insight on what I had said about how expensive clothing actually is.
Did you have any previous experience when it came to sewing? Because for my experience, like in 6th grade, we had that home ec class where they kind of taught us, a little bit of the basics about sewing. Did you have any of that experience at all, or was it just a completely new experience for you?
I did have home ec and, did a little sewing in there, except I did not care about it. I had the shittiest little backpack that I made or whatever. And it honestly wasn't any interest of mine at all. But, I guess since I did get that sewing machine, basically what I did was just I cut apart a hoodie and then I laid it on fabric, cut out the fabric, around the pattern, and then I sewed it back together. Ever since I first put on my very first shirt that I made, I've been pretty much obsessed with it. And I don't know, it's one of the most powerful feelings to me to be able to, create whatever you have in your mind and actually bring it into, the physical reality, which is really cool.
What was the hardest aspect about sewing when you started out? What was the hardest thing for you to sort of adjust to?
Well, my background, I guess, I'm super adventurous. I love nature. I love going out. I love partying. I love hanging out with my friends. I love skateboarding. So I guess my background really has nothing to do with sewing at all. One of my biggest hurdles in the beginning was actually learning how to get my techniques down. And then basically, I have all these ideas in my head, but the hardest thing was just reverse engineering basically everything I was looking at. I was taking apart jackets just to see how they did stuff, and then I couldn't even put them back together and all sorts of stuff like that. But it was a serious process. The biggest learning curve basically with anything. I never knew how hard sewing was, or how much work it would be, how expensive, and how much time actually does go into it.
What would you say is the average amount of time that it's taking you to make just one shirt? And has that, obviously you've probably gotten better at it as you've gotten more used to it, but how has that evolved over time? Have you been able to trim it down to half the amount of time, or what's that process been like?
Yeah, so the very first thing I made was a hoodie, and I still have it laying around here somewhere. I have a box of about probably 80 shirts that I had first made that weren't even good enough to even try on. You know what I mean? They were a little bit, the armhole would be really tiny, or the hood would be really huge. So the first hoodie I made, I started out with a hooded sweatshirt. And then from there I went to button-ups, t-shirts, dresses, jackets, backpacks, hats. But my very first hoodie I made, I bet you it took me about 8 hours. And now I can get it down in about 2 to 2.5 hours from start to finish, where I have all my materials ready, patterns and everything laid out, and then cut everything up, sew it together, put tags in it, and, ready for photos on the website type deal.
Since you said your first piece was a hoodie, what is the hardest aspect about making a hoodie? Is there a certain time in the process that really is the most difficult for you?
I guess the hardest part about working with hoodies is that it's kind of a stretchier material, and especially if you have lines and patterns that you're trying to match together, because on a side seam you don't want lines to be kind of colliding with each other in a way that just doesn't look like it flows, because you can make a shirt look really messed up just by not lining stuff up right. And so pretty much the hardest part was working with patterns that were stretchy, and then just getting them through the machine in a way where, when you unfold it, they actually move and flow smoothly.
One of the big things that we love to stress on this podcast is, about overcoming adversity, overcoming obstacles. What would you say was the biggest obstacle when you were starting out, even thinking about maybe even starting your own company or thinking about branching out, and how did you overcome that?
Well, so my biggest obstacle was being self-taught. I'm a designer here in Minneapolis, the mini Twin Cities area, who I guess completely taught myself. I have a couple of friends that do it, and they have shown me a few things here and there. But for the majority of it, it's just been all self-learning. And the biggest obstacle for me was basically, my network. It took me so long to build, friendships with people in the scene, whether it be sewing instructors, models, photographers, other fashion designers. So I kind of thought in the beginning that I had a disadvantage because I never actually went to school for it. I never got to be, adjusted to the scene, and I was just kind of thrown right into it. But in the end, I think it honestly worked out for me just as well, because I'm hanging around, everyone else who's in the scene, who went to school for it. And not only that, I've been a part of Minnesota Fashion Week 2 times last year, 1 time this year. And I've done several fashion shows for different magazines in the area, and also have traveled out of state for some different things too. So
totally forgot that you're in Minnesota. I'm in Bloomington myself, so
nice.
I'm about like 15 minutes away from you. So yeah, I totally forgot about that. So how would you describe sort of the Minneapolis fashion scene? Because I think it is a little bit more distinct than other areas. But what really do you think makes the Minneapolis scene a little bit more distinctive than other areas?
Well, the fashion scene here in Minneapolis, I think it's really no matter where you're at, it's really cutthroat. A lot of designers, they don't want to teach you their skills. It's like the things that they've been working on for so long, type stuff, and they don't want to give away their secrets. But I think the fashion scene here is really cutthroat, and it's hard to find kind of a really relaxed, down to earth, designers that I can get along with. I really feel like somewhat of an outcast just because of my background. I don't make the fanciest clothes. I can make suit jackets and really nice dresses and stuff like that, but I'm really more into like the everyday clothing, that like everyone you see walking in the streets would be wearing. And that's what really makes me different from a lot of designers in the area. And not only that, I'm one of the only people that I've met that does menswear. For guys, it's really hard to go out there and find something that's completely different. Like women have all sorts of like crazy dresses, like these wrap things. They got, skirts with like leggings that I don't even know. And guys, it's like so basic. We got jeans, hoodies, t-shirts, maybe a nice jacket or something. But it's really hard to kind of step out of the box with menswear. And I think I'm unique in the way where, I specialize in menswear with lots of color and print. And also I think my clothing is, pretty androgynous to where my menswear also women could wear. And I don't think you could tell, the difference between what it would be or would not be. And the only reason that really happened, I guess, is because not a lot of people step out of the box with their menswear to do, wild, colorful prints and stuff like that.
Yeah, my clothing options too are very limited. I'm just the basic guy, just straight out of college. You can't really afford too much, so you got to go with just your t-shirts, your sweaters, kind of like what I'm wearing right now. So yeah, it is really great. But Minneapolis is also a super progressive city. But when it comes to, I bet it's probably gotten better. But has it ever been hard for you being a male that is sewing? Because when people normally think of people sewing, they normally think of women. They think of that old school kind of sewing. Have you ever had to overcome some of that? Just because when people think of you as sewing, they might not really picture you as the sewing type?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the times when I'm out in public, I'll be out with my friends or whatever, and people are like, "Oh my God, I love your shirts," or like whatever, whether I'm wearing it or a friend. And sometimes when people compliment me on it, and I'm like, "Oh, thank you so much. I actually made it myself." Like a lot of people get kind of thrown off by it, or they don't believe me, and then also another huge, stereotype is that all guy designers are gay.
Yep.
So when I'm, I could be at an event, whether I'm hitting on chicks or just it comes up in everyday conversation, people automatically assume that, like over and over and over and over, which is kind of different. But also I think it helps let the guards down of some of the people as well.
I was going to say that must help with the ladies though. If they think that you're gay, then you can kind of flirt with them a little bit more and get away with a little things. So it works good both ways. Yep. When it came down to sort of starting your own clothing company, at what point did you decide that you want to do that? How long had you been into sewing when you decided, hey, maybe I want to start something myself?
So it all started as a hobby. pretty much. I just wanted to start making my own clothes ever since I made the first hoodie. I just loved wearing, I go to the fabric store, I can get lost in there for hours and hours. So that's kind of like my happy place. But it all started as just a complete hobby. And then, I was embarrassed when I first started sewing because all the stigma around like the little old lady thing, women doing it, or you have to be gay to be into design, stuff like that. And then, so it really happened really slowly for me. I didn't even really tell anyone I first started sewing for probably 5 or 6 months. And then, eventually a bunch of my friends started wanting things, that I made. So I'd started slowly making things for my friends. And then from there went on to doing events. I did my first fashion show downtown Minneapolis at the Poorhouse. And I did about 35 different outfits for that one. And that was the very first time I ever sold anything. And that was probably about a year after I'd started sewing already. So I really haven't even, had my clothing in the market that long. But ever since the first event I've ever done, I've done about 60 events in the area, and every single one has been successful for me.
Yeah, shout out to the Poorhouse. I went there to check out one of the bands that I had on this podcast. It's a great venue. So yeah, definitely everyone go check out the Poorhouse. And when's the next fashion week? Or is it a certain time of year, or when's the next upcoming one?
Well, so Fashion Week Minnesota is in April and September. So I just had a show for the Scout Guide Minneapolis at the W in the Fauché Tower, and that was called Minsta Fashion for Fashion Week Minnesota, and that was their opening show. But I do have several shows coming up. One of them, Northern Vogue, is on November 29th, and that's going to be in the Fauché Tower at the W. I'm doing one December 8th for the Volk magazine in Northeast Minneapolis. And then I actually just got asked last night to do a brand launch clothing event, like fashion show in Kansas City. So I'm planning on going down there December 1st for that one as well.
That's awesome. And one of the things that I found out when I was starting this podcast, and stuff that you've no doubt had to deal with, is getting your name out there, sort of marketing. It can be a struggle because, like you said, Minneapolis, there's probably dozens upon dozens or hundreds of other clothing designs. What were some ways that you sort of used when you were starting out to sort of differentiate yourself from other places and sort of get your name and recognition out there?
All right. So it's kind of funny. Literally, all I did was start an Instagram page, and I never had an Instagram till I started making the shirts, but it's so visual. One of my friends, he was like, you have to start an Instagram and just post pictures of, the stuff you made. And since then, I have around, I think it's about 7,000 followers from around the area. And then that's basically where I get most of my work from. I get scouted from there all the time, where people just, send me messages to my inbox and ask me to be a part of different events. But basically, just only social media is the way I've gotten my stuff out there, and then face-to-face interactions, actually meeting with people, and just getting the word out there like that.
That's really what it's all about. It's just about that interaction. And just like I always say, just be nice to people. That's the least that you can do is be nice to people. And if you're nice to people, life will be so much easier than if you're a dick. We've had plenty of people on the show that are just super nice, and it really, really helps out, especially because you never know. The one person you're talking to at one point in the bar could end up being the person that changes your life. So just be nice, and just with everything and all that. So when you're looking for an event, what are some of the main things that you look for in an event that really would appeal to you?
What would appeal to me versus what's out there and what I'm doing is kind of, it changes always. What appeals to me, my target market is younger people like myself. I do mostly menswear. So I'm looking for, maybe college age guys like you and I, who just basically aren't afraid to show off their personality through what they're wearing, I guess. If you look at about 99% of the guys around you, or, even women, you're going to see plain colors like black, tan, gray, white. And I make clothing, for people who aren't afraid to wear a little bit of color. But what I look for in events is, pretty much just how many people are going to be attending, whether it's going to be, some super old people like at some of these art fairs that I've been a part of, or whether it's, the younger people like at some of the events like at the Poorhouse and stuff like that. But really, it's not really hit or miss. Pretty much everything has been successful for me, except for just a very small amount of shows. But honestly, I do whatever I can. And then, I think I'm going to keep on learning. And like you said, you could meet a guy at the bar that could change your life. You have no idea. So, I mean, I've been a part of an event where I thought it was going to amount to nothing. And then, I easily made like $1,000 or something like that, or met someone who got me into Minnesota Fashion Week or Uptown Art Fair or the Minneapolis Art Expo, things like that. So you really never know who you're going to meet. And I would just like to take every opportunity that I actually can.
I've always wondered this. When it comes to buying your tools, is fashion design really an expensive process when it comes to financing everything, buying, like you said, the threads, the needles, the sewing machines, all that stuff? Like, yeah, basically like what you're showing us right now. So how expensive is that stuff?
All right. Well, this was my first industrial machine right here. And all it does is a straight stitch. It's pretty basic, jukey straight stitch industrial. This runs about $800 to about $1,100. And this was my very first better machine. I have an $80 iron right here, which is kind of ridiculous. Multiple other sewing machines up here. I got another one here. Couple over there. I got my own photography equipment. I have backdrops, cameras, the editing stuff. This dress form is a couple $100. Here's another industrial sewing machine that's about $1,200 to $1,400 bucks. So I got all sorts of different attachments and stuff. I've literally spent thousands and thousands of dollars on all this fabric, and I have enough fabric at my house to probably make at least probably 800 to 1,000 shirts. Yeah. So I mean, it's a really huge investment in not only money, also time as well. So I have to draw all my own patterns. Actually got a big stack of them right here. But I get those from, measurements. And then I have to test each individual pattern to make sure that it fits right before I can actually put it into production.
That is just such an eye-opening experience for me. Like, I had no idea that really that much went into it. I mean, I know that the sewing machines were expensive, but then people don't think about when they look at some of these expensive, like, I'll admit I've had my moments where I think of something, I was like, why is it this expensive? It was like, I could make this, but then people don't realize that it's the creative process that comes into it. It's all the design hours, all of the workmanship. Because I mean, I bet even you have had those times where you look at something and you're like, really that much? Come on, like I could do that. But it's just, people don't understand really what really goes deep down into it. And one of the things that we talked about before we started recording this was, when it comes to outsourcing, everyone hears about these shirts that are from China, or CZ shirts that are from China for $5, and then you hear all these times about companies outsourcing their products to countries for cheaper labor. How does that impact people like you who are staying in country and who are doing all of your work down here, as opposed to someone in China who can make what you're making for 5 cents?
Yeah. So, I never really knew how big of a discrepancy there was between, domestic and foreign manufacturing until I got into this. For this t-shirt right here, this probably cost about $10 just to make. Just not even counting my hours and labor or any of that, just materials. And I mean, over in China, basically what it comes down to is just capitalism and people bullying each other around, and some of these governments overseas, they just straight up treat their people very, very wrong. They're forcing them to work in unsafe conditions. And then, it's all in the name of capitalism. You know what I mean? They want to get our business. And then, so, it kind of goes like that. But, I mean, it's not hard for me to make sales because most people do understand that. But, every once in a while, and it's honestly mostly friends and family that I hear a bunch of shit from about, oh, I wouldn't spend $60 on a hoodie, or, I wouldn't spend $30 on a t-shirt. And I'm like, well, I know how long it takes to make this. And honestly, even I charge about $20 an hour for my labor. And that's how I kind of price my stuff. And even a lot of other designers in the area think I sell my stuff way too cheap because they're out there selling or trying to sell $80 t-shirts. And I'm like, okay, that's ridiculous, but so there has to be somewhere in the middle, of this, in-house manufacturing. And obviously, the market has changed because of all the overseas manufacturing. So I think it has to be, kind of somewhere in the middle, because there's such a huge difference between, making something. And I've even researched and, contacted companies overseas just to kind of see what the prices were and stuff like that. Even some of these companies will still charge the person who designs it. They'll charge them damn near the same amount that you could make it yourself. If you just put the time into it, it wouldn't cost you much more. Like, but so, I mean, and it's still just a huge learning curve too. Obviously, the more equipment I get, the more, stuff I have, better technology, I can do things a lot faster. I'm not a huge factory or anything like that yet. So that would help drive down the cost. If I had laser cutting equipment, these rollers that automatically spread out the fabric and then layer them up like, 3 inches thick, 100 layers or whatever it is. So, the further along I get with that kind of stuff, I figure right now my stuff is probably, I don't want to say the most expensive as it'll be, the most expensive to produce probably right now. But I'm looking forward to just learning better techniques in the future. And then hopefully I want to help change the game with manufacturing to kind of help bring a lot of it back home. Because there's even documentaries that show after all the shipping costs, everything that they do to their workers and how it affects the economies like all over the world. The price difference really isn't that great, on what you can do over there compared to here. So I really, want to help bring some of that back.
I saw one of those documentaries that they had on those Chinese labor workers where they have basically these kids as young as sometimes even like as young as 10. They house them in like these like big, huge buildings where they work them 16 hours a day. And then they have like these little rooms that are like 12 by 12 square feet where the kids are basically sleep then. And just the horrible work conditions. And they even have like nets on the side because so many people try to commit suicide because they're just so miserable that they try to jump. Oh, and yeah. It's one of those things where I feel that if people were to watch that, they would realize, what we are doing. I mean, the problem is that, like you said, we are a capitalist country, but those countries aren't. So they can do whatever they want to their workers. Like the Chinese are still a communist country where they can make you work, 85 hours a week. So that's why I just think, especially buying more American, it's even better for our economy and it helps out local businesses. It's one of the best things that you can do. And I do think it's gotten a little bit better over the past, 5 or so years because you have heard about these jobs that are sometimes coming back, but it still is a huge, huge problem that really needs to be addressed. And especially coming from a small business standpoint, I feel that that's super important. But when it comes to when you're making your stuff too, what is your favorite type of fabric that you like to use?
Well, I love to use stretchy fabrics now. I just kind of bashed on it in the beginning about, how it was kind of hard to line stuff up. But I do like the fact that it's more pliable, than say like a thicker woven fabric that doesn't stretch at all. Let's say you're making a canvas jacket. If you accidentally mess up, there's no stretching it into place or anything like that. And plus, a lot of knits like sweatshirts, t-shirts, stuff like that, it's just comfy stuff to wear. And that's the type of stuff that I like to wear every day.
Absolutely. And, like I always say, I have a ton of guests on here that aren't from Minnesota, so they don't really understand what it's like from November to basically April up here. So when it comes to that design, how important is it for you, or what part of your inventory would you say is built for cold weather gear? Because like I said, we always have a saying up here in Minnesota, you only got to look good 6 months out of the year because the other 6 months you're going to be, all covered up anyway. So how important is it to you to make those winter inventory items?
Well, like I said, I started making, hoodies, sweatshirts. I guess I make stuff more in the season that I'm in too. A lot of designers, they're preparing their fall stuff like in the spring. And me, I work on sets of things and I get a lot done, during the actual seasons. And then, try to get rid of stuff that way. I've made fur jackets in the past, all sorts of Polar Tech jackets, which is the same material as like North Face uses for their jackets. It's kind of waterproof, windproof, but especially, making my own clothing in Minnesota, you have to keep warm in the winter. And it's not like I'm not just going to start buying other people's jackets just to stay warm.
Absolutely. It's just a huge thing that I don't think a lot of people realize, especially coming from different climates, just how you got to be in season also with the area that you're living in. And what is your least favorite material to work with? What is the hardest material for you to work with?
Some of the hardest material that I've worked with is definitely leather. I've made a couple of leather jackets, leather shorts, backpacks, different things. And the worst thing is that if you mess up with leather and you have to unstitch it, you have holes that you poked through the leather. Whereas if you have any type of other fabric, it just slips right between the fibers. And with leather, you have little holes and whatever. And it's also super hard to work with. Like just it almost breaks your fingers,
Have you worked with a lot of materials? Like have you worked with like silk or satin? Have you really explored all the genres?
Yeah. So when I go to these different fabric warehouses, I don't really have anything in mind on what I want to make. I usually just see a fabric and then I'm like, wow, that'd be a cool jacket or that'd be a cool hoodie. And then that's kind of my design process from the start. You seen that huge shelf of fabric I have over there? I have to stop buying fabric. But anyways, yeah. So I mean, I've pretty much worked with everything. I do like working with silks and stuff like that. However, when it comes to making, I make a lot of custom clothing for people. And when they come to the fabric store with me and they see some of these silks they could be $30 a yard or something like that. Yeah. So it could cost you easily just $75 in materials just to make the shirt, which is just, honestly, I'm the designer. I would never even do that, unless you're going to some fancy show off event, something like that,
Yeah, those things are just way too expensive, especially for my taste. And what, out of all of the work that you've ever done, what would you say is the one item you are the most proud of?
The one item I'm most proud of, I guess, would be some of my fur jackets because of how much feedback I've gotten from them. I actually had the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Fry. He came to one of my events. He bought a shirt from me, and then he liked my fur jacket so much he got a picture, and it was awesome. But yeah, so I guess I really like some of the different jackets that I've made just because, in Minnesota it is cold pretty much like seven months out of the year. And then plus they're just a little nicer than, say, a t-shirt or a random hoodie that I make.
Yeah, so, absolutely. And what do you make your fur jackets out of?
I always use faux fur. I don't ever use real fur. Actually, I do have some real fur that I used for a backpack, which was from like a cow or something like that. It was just like leather with the the hair still on it. But it would cost me probably $1,000 to make a real fur jacket. But I just like the look of them, kind of the feel, like how, I don't know, they're really wild and kind of unique.
Do you have a color that's your favorite of yours to work with?
I like anything that just pops. I really love like electric colors, like not so neon, but really colors that are really rich and just full of color and life.
And I always like to say the fashion industry is always ever changing. I mean, every new season comes with different looks, comes with what really is considered in and what really is the it factor. Is that hard for you sometimes to sort of know what the change is going to be like and to also, appeal to that audience? Because if you're making the same style of clothing for like years on years, you're probably not going to do as well as someone who's able to adapt and change as well as a lot of these companies do. Has that been a struggle for you?
Well, so most designers I know, they only have a few patterns that they work with, and they keep making the same thing over and over and over and over. I have hundreds of different patterns I've made for overalls, hats, backpacks, t-shirts, dresses. I've even made moccasins. So when it comes to what I feel I should be making or keeping up with trends or whatever, I don't really give a shit about that. I just want it to be more from the heart, what I exactly want to do, because the more I worry about what I think these fashion show people want to see or whatever, it really just takes away from my creative abilities. I never do as well as when it just flies out of me just purely,
When it comes to your inspiration for these designs, where do you mainly get it from? I mean, when we have bands in here, I always sort of like to ask, how do you get the inspiration for your lyrics? And I've always said this would be really cool if someone said yes, but there's always that trope that people who have like this dream in a movie, and then they dream of either like the perfect song or maybe like the perfect design. Has that ever happened to you? And even if it hasn't, what would you say is the main way that you come up with the designs that you work on?
All right, so I guess the thing that inspires me the most, shoot, it's all sorts of stuff. It could be concerts. It could be my friends. I mean, you get ideas from all over the place. I'm not just going to say I get only my fashion ideas from other fashion and stuff like that. Sometimes I could see some sort of curve in something and then be like, wow, that would look good as the front of a button-up shirt. Or like, like even I saw I'm huge into like technology and documentaries and stuff. And I saw a documentary about like gene editing and stuff like that, which was really weird. So I took one of my jackets and I put a DNA sequence into it that blended in two different animal patterns that kind of went in, kind of like a thing like that. So, I mean, my inspiration can really come from anywhere.
That's so awesome. I mean, I always find it so cool how people get inspired to do the work that they do. And when it comes also down to the different products that you wear, I mean, is that hat that you wear, is that also something that you made?
This hat? No, this isn't something I made.
Oh,
but
I was going to say.
I could make this, but no, I didn't make this one.
Is there, did you make the shirt?
Yeah, I made this t-shirt.
Yeah, that's totally awesome. Is there one design that you haven't worked on right now that is like your end goal, like one design that you would really love to achieve?
Well, one thing I want to work on a lot more is jean jackets and jean material because I really love denim a lot. And it I don't know, it's just a tough material, and also I think it's some of the flyest stuff you can wear. And there's also so many different things you can do with it too, like throwing bleach on it. You can distress it. Like I made an outfit called the $1,000,000 Man that has microchips within the distressed rips and stuff that I made. And then the microchips actually light up with LED lights. But yeah, so one thing I want to work on a lot more is probably my jean jackets.
Yeah. And now I gotta ask, this is one of my favorite questions that I came up with. What is your favorite fashion trend of all time and least favorite fashion trend of all time?
All right. My favorite fashion trend of all time is probably just these super fresh streetwear looks, like the go out on the town type of stuff that, just catches people's eyes because it's so different. I love thinking out of the box and just, creatively and coming up with new ideas. And the thing I hate seeing the most is just this cliche, super weird, like high fashion, like super poofy or like these like weird lines. I see a lot of fashion shows where designers make stuff that everyday people would never, ever, ever wear. And I'm looking for, the little chunks of gold in ready to wear stuff where people would just, you'll pick it out of your closet and go wear it and, just go out for the night, stuff like that.
I always say, like, whenever those Victoria's Secret fashion shows are on and I watch I don't watch it for the fashion, let's be honest. But when I watch those things, none of those things that those ladies wear no one will ever buy those things. Like, if they have, like, the butterfly wings on the back of it, or, like, the wings, and it's like, you just wasted a perfectly good opportunity to, like, actually show off stuff that people might actually want to buy and wear. So I don't get that at all. And my favorite fashion trend of all time, I love flannel, just because it's the cold weather. I like wearing a nice flannel that's nice and heated. I also like, I think they got to bring mullets back. That's another thing. Bring back a good old school 80s mullet with some flannel. That's one of the best looks. And even when you're talking about denim jeans, I was like, yes, denim. Bring back those denim jackets, like those 80s things. But least favorite, I gotta go with fanny packs. I'm sorry, people.
Okay.
Don't wear. My dad used to wear fanny packs, so that scarred me for life. But yeah, it's one of those things. And Uggs too. It's like, people, you got to try a little bit more. Sometimes. Uggs can be all right for like old people, but it's like for younger people. Come on now, people. So Have you ever thought about moving on to sort of like like you said, you made moccasins. Have you explored footwear at all other than that?
That's actually what I wanted to get into when I first started sewing. So I saw a documentary on Vans and how they started back in the day. They were a completely custom shoe store where you'd walk in, you pick your fabrics, and you look at different styles of shoes, and then you create your own custom shoe, and then you would come and pick it up a few days later after they made it for you. And then, someone corporate loved the idea. They bought Vans out, quit doing the custom thing, started making stuff overseas, and then just duplicated it 50 times. So I wanted to start with the custom shoe thing, except I instantly found out that the learning curve on making shoes was just out of control. You need very specialized machines, that do all sorts of different things, whether it be pressure that steams and actually shapes the shape of the shoe. There's all sorts of different stuff, but that's actually what I wanted to get into first. And I will definitely get into that someday.
Absolutely. And have you tried any of the smaller things for people? Like, have you done like headbands? Have you done maybe like scarves, or have you done some of the smaller stuff as well?
Yep. Yeah, I've done all that. Accessories. I've pretty much made everything you can think of except for like an actual pair of shoes.
Yeah. And other than your Facebook, which is how we got in contact, if people were looking to get in contact with you, if they wanted to buy some clothes or get in contact with you for some designs, other than Facebook, do you guys have a website, or what are other ways that people could get in contact with you?
Yeah, my website is cotyclothingco.com. So that's COTY, Clothing Co. And then my Instagram is at Coty Clothing Co. So you can check it out on there, message me on Facebook, Instagram, or even contact me through my website.
I'll leave all those links down below. And I like to ask these few final questions to every guest we have on the show. And for the first one, it's going to be, if you were to walk down the street and then obviously someone says, like, hey, I really love what you're wearing, and then you kind of let them know that you designed it, and they said, hey, I'd really kind of, like to get into sort of a design, a little bit more of a fashion in me, what would be the best piece of advice you would give that person in order for them to be successful?
In wanting to pursue a design career?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I've given tons and tons of people advice. I actually have a couple of interns right now, people who are just helping me out in my studio, get a lot of stuff done, and I'm teaching them everything I know until they think they know enough just to go do it on their own. So, I mean, the best piece of advice that I could give anyone is, if you have a question, feel free to contact me, ask me, because I had such a hard time getting into it, being self-taught in the beginning. I would love to help out anyone who thinks they might have an interest in it. And I would love to see, a lot more people doing exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, we definitely, like you said, when you're specializing in guys wear, that is really something that needs to change because guys do really have the blend. I mean, I can guarantee, like, if I were to walk down the street right now, it would be almost the same thing for guys. Girls have so much more, they have so much more differentiating fashion trends, and it's one of those things that really needs to catch up. And now, if you could go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice you would give him?
Well, honestly, I guess everything really led me to this point. If I didn't do everything, and I mean, I moved out of state on a whim to go work a hurricane out in Rhode Island back in like 2012 or something like that, Hurricane Sandy. And I guess my best advice would be just keep doing what you're doing. But I honestly wish that I would have, started sewing a lot earlier, because then it would have fast tracked me, to my future in this. But honestly, I don't know if I'd change a thing.
And is there one thing that you would sort of like to stress out to future customers? Like, has there ever been one area when people contact you that can add the most stress when it comes, like, they don't know your prices or they don't know how long stuff would take? Is there a certain thing that you would sort of like to let it out so that people won't be so frustrated if they get in contact with you when it comes to ordering or buying things?
Um, Well, I guess I'm just one guy doing this all by myself right now. I do have a couple people helping me out here and there. But when it comes down to it, I'm doing all the sourcing. I'm doing the pattern drafting, the cutting, the sewing, the actual testing of the shirts and the fit. I'm doing all the marketing, the fashion shows. So I really have a lot, to deal with right now. I guess I'm not sure if there's too many frustrations with buying something, because if someone wants something, I instantly invite them over to my place, into my studio. They can see I have about 150 shirts just kind of hanging up on racks that I've already made. And then one of my favorite things is I could take you to the fabric store. You can pick out any fabric you want, and I can make you anything except for shoes. So that's one of my absolute favorite things to do. And it really makes it kind of more of a personal experience for everyone. And I think it just brings more value to what I'm doing.
Absolutely, and that's just really cool that you really take the time to sort of go to the one-to-one with the person, because everyone's so used to like Amazon and UPS, which I happen to work for, but other services like that where you just order stuff online and you don't know what you have really until it arrives. I mean, you can get a good idea from like pictures and whatnot, but just going through it with the person, I really think that adds a certain level of just care that really a lot of people, I think, would really love to see. I mean, so many people are just so used to, like I said, the online stuff. When it comes down to actually caring for the customers, everyone, I highly recommend you go and check him out. I'll leave all of his links down below. And if you were to have like a goal set for the next year, where would you like to see yourself a year from now?
Okay, so I would like to see myself a year from now. I really want to slow down on doing all these fashion shows and stuff like that, because when it comes down to it, it's like this, like, facade of like just showing your stuff, a one-time event for like entertainment. And I'm not in it to entertain people. I'm in it to try to make a career out of it. So what I want to see for myself over the next year is to just kind of stop with the show of it. And I really just want to start, getting a lot more into production. I want to see myself walking into several stores, getting my stuff on their racks, having people start selling stuff for me. And then I want to focus on, more of the business side of it. Now that I'm not done with my creative side, but now that I know what I'm doing, I just really want to, try to focus and make a career out of it.
That's awesome, and we wish you nothing but the best. And lastly, I got to ask, one of the things that I found out was I was trying to get some T-shirts maybe for the show made, but one of the things, like, you see these websites where they're like 99-cent T-shirts, and I was like, oh, great, but you have to buy them in like for like 100 pieces, 100 sets of them. That's how they like motion it down. When it comes to that, do you sell multiple? Do you sell, like, if someone says like, hey, get me 100 of these, would you do it, or do you mainly do like the single pieces?
So right now, when it comes to custom pieces, I have some people that might order like 10 full outfits. Then they'll pick out all their fabric. It's always going to be different stuff. Basically, everything I make is one of a kind. So it's kind of unique in that way too. But however, I'll take really any order of any size, and I'm always really honest with people about when I'm going to get stuff done. Because bigger orders do take a lot of time. And then just the main thing is communication and just making sure that everyone's on the same page. But I would take an order for one shirt, even a half a shirt if you want, crop top, fuck it, or 100. It doesn't really matter to me.
That's so great. And again, we cannot wish you nothing but the best. And I'll leave all of his links down below. Everyone go and check him out, especially if you're in the Minneapolis area. And like you said, he has a show coming up. What is it? November, what was the date?
November 29th, downtown at the W.
November 29th, downtown at the W. Everyone, if you can go make it out there. And what time is the show at?
I think it starts at 6 p.m.
6 p.m. So if you're in the area around then, definitely go and check it out. I mean, you'll be right done with Thanksgiving, so you might have gained a little bit of weight, so you might need to buy some stuff that's a little more heavier for you. So, maybe go and check it out and see what he's got to offer. I mean, just by looking at what he's wearing right now, you can tell that he clearly knows what he's doing. And everyone, just go and give him a shout out. Go and check him out. And I really, really appreciate it. And is there anyone that you would like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Well, I guess shout out to my ex-girlfriend who got me into sewing. I literally think about it every day. How if she never would have came into my life, I never probably would have found one of the most important things to me. Also, all my friends and family who just support me, to the fullest. I mean, I have so many people that go out of their way just to show people my stuff without even me asking. And that's just the greatest thing in the world. Shout out to everyone who basically just gives me more confidence to keep doing what I'm doing. And I love it, when people come up to me and say, hey, it's great to finally meet you. I've seen you all over social media, this and that. I just want to say how, great you're doing. I really appreciate all that and all the positive feedback I've gotten.
That's awesome. And again, we wish you nothing but the best. And I really think you're going to go places, and keep us definitely updated. And again, I'll send all the links down there, and I hope everyone just go out there and just check him out. You never know. You might find that you really enjoy his fashion, especially for guys out there. And I'll definitely recommend it to everyone I can see. But again, you guys, really appreciate having him on. All the links down below. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the Spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.